Her eyes open, she could see, but the rest of her body might as well have belonged to someone else for all the control she had over it. Even blinking was slow. Her brain felt crammed full of feathers. She's awake, mistress, Lucy shrilled, nearly dropping her feet. She's looking at me. I told you not to worry. Mistress Mercure's voice came from above her head. She cannot channel or twitch a muscle, not with fork root tea in her. I discovered that by accident, but it has certainly come in handy. It was true. Elaine sagged between them like a doll with half the stuffing gone, bumping her bottom along the steps, and she could as well have run as channel. She could sense the true source, but trying to embrace it was like trying to pick up a needle on a mirror with cold-numbed fingers. Panic welled up, and a tear slid down her cheek. Perhaps these women meant to turn her over to the White Cloaks for execution, but she could not make herself believe that the White Cloaks had women setting traps, in the hope that an Aes Sedai might wander in. That left dark friends, and almost certainly serving the Black Ajah right along with the Yellow. She would surely be put in the hands of the Black Ajah unless...
Hey, Freddie, how you doing, bro?
To escape. She could not count on
Hope you're doing good.
And she could neither move nor channel. Suddenly she realized that she was trying to scream and producing only a thin, gurgling mew. Halting it took all the strength she had left. Nynaeve knew all about herbs, or claimed she did. Why had she not recognized whatever that tea was?
Hell yeah. About to do a nice little...
The small, firm voice in the back of her head sounded remarkably like Linda.
Got that one. Oh shit, cats having kittens? That's crazy. Up to 5, down.
She set herself to the simple task of embracing Saida. It had been a simple task, but now she might as well have been attempting to reach Saidin. She kept on, though. It was the only thing she could do.
Let's see. This one's some train wreck.
As soon as they had dropped Elaine onto a narrow bed in a small, close room with one window, she hustled Lucy right out again, with not even a backward glance.
All that's what I'm about to do is take a dab at this one.
With tarnished brass pulls on the doors. She could move her eyes, but shifting her head was beyond her. In a few minutes, the two women returned, puffing, with Nynaeve slung between them, and heaved her onto the other bed. Her face was slack and glistening with tears, but her dark eyes, fury filled them, and fear too. Elaine hoped anger was uppermost. Nynaeve was stronger than she when she could channel. Perhaps Nynaeve could manage where she was failing miserably, time after time. Those had to be tears of rage. Telling the thin girl to stay there, Mistress Mercure hurried out once more, this time coming back with a tray that she placed atop the high chest. It held the yellow teapot, one cup, a funnel, and a tall hourglass. Now, Lucy, find you pour a good 2 ounces into each of them as soon as that hourglass empties. As soon, Why don't we give it to them now, mistress? The girl moaned, wringing her hands. I want them to go back to sleep. I don't like them looking at me. They would sleep like the dead girl. And this way we can let them rouse just enough to walk when we need them to. I will dose them more properly when it's time to send them off. They'll have headaches and stomach cramps to pay for it, but no more than they deserve. But what if they can't channel, mistress? What if they do?
Hell yeah.
They're looking at me. Stop blabbering, girl, the older woman said briskly.
This one I remember right is a witch's brew.
Helpless as kittens in a sack. And they will stay that way as long as you keep a good dose in them. I told you, understand? I must go tell old Avi to send off one of his pigeons and make a few arrangements. But I will be back as soon as I can. You had better brew another pot of fork root, just in case. I'll go out back. Close up the shop. Someone might wander in, and that would never do. After Mistress Mercure left, Lucy stood staring at her.
Let's get a dab of this one.
Wringing her hands.
This one is Island OG. It's a cross between, what is it, Legend OG and Orange Blossom. But it definitely has a nice little citrusy flavor to it.
Failed. Tried again and failed. Tried again. Oh, right. Try, Nynaeve. Try. The hourglass filled her eyes. She could not look at anything else. Sand pouring down, each grain marking another failure on her part. The last grain dropped, and Lucy did not come. Elaine strained harder for the source to move. After a bit, the fingers of her left hand twitched. Yes! A few minutes more and she could lift her hand. Only a feeble inch before it fell again, but it had lifted. With an effort, she could turn her head. Mumbled thickly, barely intelligible. Her hands gripping the coverlet under her tongue. She seemed to be trying to sit up. Not even her head lifted, but she was trying. Elaine tried to say. It sounded more like a grunt to her ears. Slowly, she managed to raise her hand to where she could see it and hold it there. A thrill of triumph shot through her. Stay afraid of us, Lucy. Stay down there in the kitchen a little while longer, and... The door banged open, and sobs of frustration racked her as Lucy
Oh, that's where it is.
She had been so close. The girl took one look at them, and with a yelp of pure terror, darted for the high chest.
Elaine tried to torch up. I was wondering where
Lucy batted her floundering hands away effortlessly.
that part was.
Forced the funnel between her teeth just as easily. The girl panted as if running. Cold, bitter tea filled Elaine's mouth. She stared up at the girl in a panic that Lucy's face shared. But Lucy held Elaine's mouth shut and stroked her throat with a grim, if fearful determination until she swallowed. As darkness overwhelmed Elaine, she could hear liquid sounds of protest coming from Nynaeve. When her eyes opened again, Lucy was gone, and the sands...
I don't know, I like the titanium one too much.
Whether in fear or anger, Elaine could not have said.
1 second.
Nynaeve would not give in. That was one of the things she
I might have to switch back to the glass one.
Nynaeve's head could have been on the chopping block, and she would not give up. Our heads are on the block. It made her ashamed that she was so much weaker than Nynaeve. She was supposed to be Queen of Andor one day, and she wanted to howl with terror. She did not, even in her head. Doggedly, she went back to trying to force her limbs to move, to trying to touch Saidar, but she wanted it. How could she ever be a queen when she was so weak? Again, she reached for the source.
There we go.
Again, racing the grains of sand. Again. Once more, the glass emptied itself without Lucy. Ever so slowly, she reached the point where she could raise her hand again.
Switch
and then
the tip.
Even if it did drop back immediately. She could hear Nynaeve muttering to herself, and she could actually understand most of the words. The door crashed open once more. Elaine lifted her head to stare at it despairingly, and gaped. Tom Maryland stood there like the hero of one of his own tales, one hand firmly gripping the neck of a Lucy near fainting, the other holding a knife.
Okay, let's do a little bit more of that witch's brew real quick.
Came out more like a croak. Roughly, he shoved the girl into a corner. You stay there, or I'll strut this blade on your hide. In 2 steps, he was at Elaine's side, smoothing her hair back, worry painting his
I'm going to have to switch torches. This one's not going to be enough for this one.
Not her, Nynaeve muttered. Other one went away. Help me up the walk. Tom left her, reluctantly, Elaine thought. He showed Lucy his knife again, threateningly. She cowered as if she never meant to move again, then made it disappear up his sleeve in a twinkle. Calling Nynaeve to her feet, he began walking her up and down the few paces the room allowed. She sagged against him limply, shuffling. I'm glad to hear this frightened little cat didn't trap you, he said. If she had been the one, he shook his head. No doubt he would think just as little of them if Nynaeve told him the truth. Elaine certainly did not intend to. I found her rushing up the stairs, so panicked she did not even hear me behind her. I'm so glad that another one got away without Julian seeing her. She mumbled. She can't let too many people knew about herself. In another minute, she might be able to sit up. She was looking right at Lucy. The girl flinched and tried to shrink through her legs. Oh, I just... You can't. Quickly, hang it up. Julian? Naomi said. Her hand wavered as she glared up the green. She had no trouble speaking. I told the parent you to stay with the wagon. Tom blew out his mustaches irritably.
Oh, yeah, cheers.
Put up the supplies, which did not take 2 men. Julian followed you, and when none of you came back, I went looking for him. He snorted again. For all he knew, there were a dozen men in here, but he was ready to go. His tiny skulker in the back, decided to ride in. Get you two out.
See, that's what I like to.
She could sit up, barely,
That tip
hand over hand
versus
but an effort to
this
stand
tip.
nearly put her flat again. Saidar wasn't unattainable. Her head still felt like a good. Naomi was just a little straighter to lift her,
Excuse me.
but she still hung on.
That was of the witch's brew.
Minutes later, Julian arrived, pushing Mistress Mercura ahead of him with his belt knife. She came through a gate in the back fence. Thought I was a thief. It seemed best to bring her on in. The seamstress's face had gone so pale at the sight of them that her eyes seemed darker and about to come out of her head besides. She licked her lips and smoothed her skirt incessantly and cast quick little glances at Julian's knife, as if wondering whether it might not be best to run away. For the most part, though, she stared at Elaine and Nynaeve. Elaine thought it an even chance whether she would burst into tears or swoon. Put her over there, Nynaeve, nodding to where Lucy still shivered in the corner with her arms wrapped around her knees. And help Elaine. I never heard of fork root, but walking seems to help the effects pass. You can walk most things off. Julian pointed to the corner with his knife, and Mistress Mercura scurried to it and sat herself down beside Lucy, still wetting her lips fearfully. I would not have done what I did, only I had orders. You must understand that. I had orders. Gently helping Elaine to her feet, Julian supported her in walking the few steps available, crisscrossing the other pair. She wished it were Tom. Julian's arm around her waist was much too familiar. Orders from whom? Nynaeve barked. Who do you report to in the tower? The seamstress looked sick, but she clamped her mouth shut determinedly.
These ice pretty much.
If you don't
Once that gets dirty, I'll just burn it clean.
I'll let
And then
Julian.
that.
He's a tyrant thief catcher, and he knows how to bring out a confession.
And this was titanium. And these are pretty much relatively new because I don't really use the titanium ones all that much. I use more of the glass or quartz tips just because, as you saw in the difference of the hits, that and it's a cleaner tasting hit, at least in my opinion.
Held herself rigidly against the wall, staring at him, eyes as wide as they would go. Lucy looked at him as if he had just turned into a Trolloc, 8 feet tall and complete with horns. Very well, Nynaeve said after a moment. You should find everything you need in the kitchen, Julian. Elaine shifted a startled look from her to the thief catcher and back.
Me, I like mine not so. I like them too hot of dabs just because that shit's rough on the lungs. That and I want to be able to enjoy the dab and have a clean taste of it. Even on my dab rig I have, I usually do cold starts on that, so it's kind of like a low temp, pretty much. I guess you would say.
His wife has the falling sickness, and she trailed off,
and then,
shuddering and watching Julian.
Of course, my brother, most hated grower, which is Yokan Rex. That's always good. I've had one of those before too. They work really good. It's just that the ones I ended up getting weren't very good ones, so I ended up
One of the Black Ajah
burning
names
them
they
out
knew
pretty
was
quick.
Marilyn Gamalfin. She liked cats and went out of her way to look after strays. Narenwin Varda, Nynaeve said grimly. I want more names, inside the tower or out. I don't have any more, Mistress Makira said faintly. We will see about that. How long have you been a dark friend? How long have you served the Black Ajah? An indignant squall erupted from Lucy. We aren't dark friends. She glanced at Mistress Makira and sidled away from her. At least I'm not. I walk in the light. I do. The other woman's reaction was no less strong. If her eyes had bulged before, they popped now. The Black? You mean it really exists? But the tower has always denied. Why, I asked Narenwin the day she chose me for the Yellow's eyes and ears, and it was the next morning before I could stop weeping and crawl out of my bed. I am not.
Hell yeah.
Not a dark. Never.
I've had one like that too, but luckily the one I bought, there was a silicone and it had a glass tip, but it also had it came with a titanium tip too.
But there seemed a ring of truth in the woman's voice.
Those ones,
Their outrage at
I don't
the
mind so
was
much,
really enough to
whether it's
overcome
a glass or
hesitated. She heard the same
a
thing.
titanium with the silicone ones, because
If you
I
search
actually like the silicone
she said
ones,
slowly,
because these
"Why did you
ones,
drug us?"
I've had this, like as far as glass ones are concerned,
Nodding at Elaine.
this is probably like my fourth or fifth one,
Right down to that way she holds
because
her
when I
chin,
dab my
so
room,
she seems to be
I have my
looking
AC on,
Narenwin
which
said she might use the
I have it on anyway just because even at nighttime it gets hot. But I keep my room pretty cold at night. So when I using these, this is getting hot, but it's also getting cold in here. So it's always I've always cracked it right there. Cracked like straight down there, or like all to the bottom part, just because it gets really hot from doing dabs, and then my room's cold, so it keeps this. I crack again. No. It keeps the glass cold, so with that being real hot and that being cold, it tends to break my glass a lot.
What does she have to do with this? It was on her orders. By order of the Amelin seat, it said. It said the Amelin herself said I could use any means short of killing you. You will wish you were dead when the Amelin gets hold of you.
Yeah, but I can't do that. At least not in my room.
Remember that we are not in anyone's hands yet, Nynaeve said dryly. You are in ours. Her eyes looked as shocked as Elaine felt, though. Was any reason given? The reminder that she was the captive sapped the brief burst of spirit from the woman. She sagged listlessly against Lucy.
But so far, what can I say? Knock on wood.
Sometimes
it hasn't cracked as of yet.
But not this time. Did you intend to just keep
But once I get the extra money, I might have to go end up getting a silicone one, just so I can have for my room for dabbing, and still keep this one out in the living room for when I dab out there. Just have one strictly for the room, so it saved me on nectar collectors.
He thinks you are ill, and the tea is the only thing keeping you alive until an Aes Sedai can heal you. A woman has to be careful dealing in remedies in Amadicia. Cure too many or too well, somebody whispers Aes Sedai, and the next you know, your house is burning down, or worse. Theron knows to hold his tongue about what he... Nynaeve made Tom help her closer.
I don't know about luck. I still haven't got it yet.
The real message.
These might not be that much here, but I don't got that much money to begin with, so. Cause I think this one was, I think like 20, 30 bucks, something like that. And it came with, well, it came with this tip, and it came with this titanium one too, plus like 2 extra ones of these.
Nynaeve said
So I guess that's not too bad.
And we will go
But having to do that
downstairs
like 4 or
Tom
5
helped her
times
to sit
gets
on the edge of the
pricey.
bed, then
I ended up going with that one for like
in
a
short
little while
order,
till I get the
we
money.
moved
Usually
back to
it's
back,
not until like the
the
first when I get my paycheck. I usually have to wait like that to be able to get a cheap one like this. That's probably another reason they break cheese, because they're good quality, but they're not like the best of quality. So I actually spent a little bit more on one. That'd probably be a lot better as far as like surviving it being hot and cold.
Little girl, Lindy's voice said sharply. I'm a grown woman. She told it with a firmness she would not have dared with her old nurse, even today. I do love Rand, but he is far away, and Tom is sophisticated and intelligent, and it sounded too much like excuses, even to her. Jenny would have given the snort that meant she was about to stop tolerating foolishness.
Which so far it's done pretty good.
She asked hesitantly.
Hasn't cracked on me.
Do with the salt and the cooking oil?
But I've been using this one, and all the other times
Just a general
that they were cracking on me, it was always with the titanium tips. So
But they did not either.
hopefully that was the reason it was doing it, versus me just using the glass tip.
When I sent for a basket of figs and some rice. You have to be careful. Some will confess anything, true or not, just to escape what they imagine. I do not think those two did, though. She did not either. She could not repress a shiver, however. What would somebody do with figs and rice? She hoped she stopped wondering before she gave herself nightmares.
Let's do one more, this one, and I'll get back to the ball I have loaded.
Nynaeve was tottering about without help, poking into the cupboard full of colorful canisters. Elaine needed one of the chairs. The blue canisters sat on the table, and a full green teapot, but she tried not to look at them. She still could not channel. She could embrace Saidar, yet it slipped away as soon as she did. At least she was confident now that the power would return to her. The alternative was too horrible to contemplate, and she had not let herself until this moment. Tom, Nynaeve said, lifting the lids on various containers and peering in. Surely. She paused, took a deep breath, and still not looking at the two men, said, Thank you. I begin to see why Aes Sedai have orders. Thank you very much. Not all Aes Sedai did. Reds considered all men tainted because of what men
And just for this one, I actually got to use the big torch.
because they did not leave the tower, or simply did not replace a warder who died. The Greens were the only Ajah to allow bonding with more than one warder. Elaine wanted to be a Green. Not for that reason, of course, but because the Greens called themselves the Battle Ajah. Their brown coats were lost knowledge, and blues and dark and golden fathers, Green sisters held themselves ready for the last battle, when they would go forth, as they had in the Pollock Wars, to face new bloodlines. The two men stared at one another in open amazement. They had surely been ready for the usual rough side of Nynaeve's tongue. Elaine was almost as shocked. Nynaeve liked having to be helped as much as she liked being wrong. Either made her as prickly as a briar, though of course she always claimed to be a picture of sweet reason and sense. A wisdom. Nynaeve took a pinch of powder from one of the canisters and sniffed it, touched it to the or whatever they call it here. They don't have a name. Not many women follow your old craft in Amadisia. Too dangerous. For most of those, it's only a sideline. Pulling a leather script from the bottom of the cupboard, Nynaeve began making up small bundles of containers. And who do they go to when they're ill? A hedge doctor? Yes, Elaine said. It always pleased her to show Tom that she knew things about the world, too. In Amadisia, it is men who study herbs. Nynaeve frowned scornfully. What could a man ever know about curing anything? I'd as soon ask a farrier to make a dress. Elaine realized that she had been all sisters are welcome to return to the tower. It makes no sense. That was not what she wanted to say, but at least she was closing in. The tower has its own rules, Tom said. What I said I do, they do for reasons of their own, and often not for those they need, if they give reasons at all. Julian knew they were only accepted, of course. That was at least part of why neither of them as well as he might. The surprise was on Nynaeve's face. She did not like people answering for her. There was quite a list of things Nynaeve did not like, but it was only a moment since she thanked Tom. It could not be easy to call down a man who had just saved you from being hauled off like a cabbage. Very little in the tower makes sense most of the time, she said.
Excuse me on that.
Elaine suspected that the tartness was as much for Tom as the tower. Do you believe it? Elaine took a deep breath. And saying I was to be brought back by any means? The brief look Nynaeve gave her was touched with sympathy. I don't know, Elaine. She was telling the truth. Julian turned one of the chairs around and straddled it, leaning his staff against the back. I've questioned enough thieves and told the truth when I hear it. Half of the time she was too frightened to lie, and the rest too angry. The pair of you. Taking a deep breath, Nynaeve tossed the scrip onto the table and folded her arms as if to trap her hands away from her breast. I'm afraid Julian is probably right. But the Amyrlin knows what we are doing. She sent us out of the tower in the first place. Nynaeve sniffed loudly. I can believe anything of Swan Sanche. I would like to have her for 1 hour where she could not channel. We would see how tough she is then. Elaine did not think that would make any difference. Remembering that commanding blue gaze, she suspected Nynaeve would earn a fine lot of bruises in the unlikely event that she ever got her wish. But what are we to do about it? The Ajahs have eyes and ears everywhere, it seems, and the Amyrlin herself. We could have women trying to slip things into our food all the way to Tartholin. Not if we do not look like what they expect. Lifting a yellow jug out of the cupboard, Nynaeve set it on the table beside her. This is white hen pepper. It will soothe the toothache, but it will also turn your hair black as night. Elaine put a hand to her red gold tresses. Her hair, not
cheers.
She would wager. But as much as she hated the idea, it was a good one. A little needlework on some of those dresses in the front, and we are not merchants anymore, but 2 ladies traveling with their servants. Riding on a wagon load of dye, Julian said. Her level look said gratitude for saving her extended only so far. There is a coach in the stable yard on the other side of the bridge. I think the owner will sell it. If you go back to the wagon before somebody steals it, I do not know what got into you two, just leaving it for whoever came along. If it is still there, you can take one of the horses. A few people got together near Torvald's coach in front of Rhonda McCura's shop, drawn by a team of 4, with chests strapped to the roof and a saddled horse tied on behind. Noy had lost everything when the trade with Tarabon collapsed. He was scraping a living doing odd jobs for Widow Terran now. No one in the street had ever seen the coachman before, a tall, leathery fellow with long white mustaches and cold, imperious eyes, or the dark, hard-faced official in a Tarabonner hat, who jumped down
Melted it down a little bit.
Gobbling turned to murmurs when 2 women swept out of the shop with bundles in their arms. One wore a green silk gown, the other plain blue wool, but each had a scarf wrapped around her head, so that not so much as a hint of her hair was visible. They all but leaped into the coach. 2 of the children began sauntering over to inquire who the strangers were, but while the footman was still scrambling up to the driver's seat, the coachman cracked his long whip, shouting something about making way for a lady. Her name was lost as the children threw themselves out of the way, tumbling in the dusty street, and the coach rumbled away at a gallop toward the Amador Road. The onlookers walked away, talking among themselves. A mysterious lady, obviously, with her maid, making purchases from Rhonda McCura and rushing away from the children. Little enough happened in Mardison of late, and this would provide days of conversation. The children of the light brushed themselves off furiously, but calmly decided that reporting the incident was foolish. Besides, their captain did not like nobles. He would probably send them to bring the coach back, a long ride in the heat for no more than an arrogant young sprig of one house or another. If no charges could be brought, always tricky with the nobility, it would not be the captain who took the blame. Hoping that word of their humiliation did not spread, they certainly never thought of questioning Rhonda McCura. A short time later, Theron Lugay led his cart into the yard behind the shop, provisions for the long journey ahead already packed away under the round canvas top. Indeed, Rhonda McCura had cured him of a fever that had taken 23 the winter before, but it was a nagging wife and a shrewish mother-in-law that made him glad of a journey all the way to where the witches lived. Rhonda had said someone might meet him, though not who, but he hoped to make it to Tarvalin. He tapped on the kitchen door 6 times before going in, but it was not until he climbed the stairs that he found anyone. In the back bedroom, Lucy lay stretched out on the beds, sound asleep and fully clothed, if rather rumpled, with the sun still in the sky. Neither woman roused when he shook them. He did not understand that, or why one of the coverlets was lying on the floor, cut into knotted strips, or why there were 2 empty teapots in the room but only 1 cup, or why a funnel was lying on Rhonda's pillow. But he had always known that there was a great deal in the world he did not understand. Returning to his cart, he thought about the supplies Rhonda's mummy had purchased, thought of his wife and her mother, and when he led the cart horse off, it was with the intention of seeing what Altar was like, or maybe Morandi. One way and another, it was quite a time before a disheveled Rhonda McCura tottered up to Avi Shandar's house and sent off a pigeon, a thin bone tube tied to its leg. The bird launched itself north and east, straight as an arrow toward Tarvalin. After a moment's thought, Rhonda prepared another copy on another narrow strip of thin parchment and fastened it to a bird from another coop. That one headed west, for she had promised to send duplicates of all of her messages. In these hard times, a woman had to make out as best she could, and there could be no harm in it, not the sort of reports she made to Merenrid. Wondering if she could ever get the taste of forkwood out of her mouth, she would not have minded if the report brought just a little harm to the one who called herself Nynaeve. Hoeing in his garden patch as usual, Avi paid no attention to what Rhonda did, and as usual, as soon as she was gone, he washed his hands and went inside. She had placed a larger sheet of parchment underneath the strips to cushion the nib of the pen. When he held it up to the afternoon light, he could make out what she had written. Soon a 3rd pigeon was on its way, heading in still another direction. Chapter 11. The 9-horse hitch. A wide straw hatch shaded the swan's face as she let Logain lead the way through Lugard's Shireen Gate under the late afternoon sun. The city's tall grey outer walls were in some disrepair. In 2 places she could see, tumbled stone lowered the wall to no more than a 12
shit, I hope you stay safe on that trip to the city, bro.
Close behind her, both tired from the pace the man had set over the weeks since Core Springs. He wanted to be in charge.
I hope your doctor's appointment goes well.
Him that he was. If he said when they started of a morning, when and where they stopped of a night, if he kept the money, even if he expected them to serve his meals as well as cook them, it was of little account to her. All in all, she felt sorry for him. He had no idea what she planned for him. A big fish on the hook to catch a bigger, she thought grimly. In name, Lugard was the capital of Morandi, the seat of King Roedran, but lords in Morandi spoke the words of fealty, then refused to pay their taxes, or do much of anything else that Roedran wanted. And the people
just to check up.
Morandi was a nation.
But still, hopefully all goes good for you.
Held together by supposed allegiance to the king or queen, The throne changed hands at sometimes short intervals, and fear that Andor or Ilion might snap them up if they did not hold together in some fashion. Stone walls crisscrossed the city.
Oh shit, hell yeah. That's always a good appointment then.
Haphazardly over the centuries, and more than once had actually been divided among feuding nobles. It was a dirty city, many of the broad streets unpaved, and all of them dusty. Men in high-crowned hats and aproned women in skirts that showed their ankles dodged between merchants' lumbering trains, while children played in wagon ruts. Trade
Hell
kept
yeah.
Lugard alive. Trade up from Ilion and Evudar, from Gialdan to the west and Andor to the north. Large, bare patches of ground through the city held wagons parked wheel to wheel, many heavy laden under strapped-down canvas covers, others empty and awaiting freight. Inns lined the main streets, along with horse lots and stables, nearly outnumbering the grey stone houses or shops, all roofed with tiles in blue or red or purple or green. Dust and noise filled the air, clanging from the smithies, the rumble of wagons and curses of
Yeah, that's always good when they heal up, bro.
The sun baked Lugard as it slid toward the horizon, and the air felt as though it might never rain again. When Loghain finally turned into a stable yard and dismounted behind a green-roofed inn called the Nine-Horse Hitch, Siuan clambered down from Bella gratefully and gave the shaggy mare a doubtful pat on the nose, wary of teeth. In her view, sitting on the back of an animal was no way to travel. A boat went as you turned the rudder. A horse might decide to think for itself. Boats never bit either. Bella had not so far, but she could. At least those awful first days of stiffness were gone, when she was sure Lyanna and Min were grinning behind her back as she hobbled about in the evening camp. After a day in the saddle, she still felt as if she had been thoroughly beaten, but she managed to hide it. As soon as Loghain began bargaining with the stableman, a lanky, freckled old fellow in a leather vest and no shirt, Siuan sidled close to Lyanna. "If you want to practice your wiles," she said softly, "practice them on Dalian the next hour." Lyanna gave her a dubious look. She had dabbled in smiles and glances at some of the villages since Core Springs, but Loghain had gotten no more than a flat look, then sighed and nodded. Taking a deep breath, she glided forward in that startling, sinuous way, leading her arch-necked grey and already smiling at Loghain. Siuan could not see how she did that. It was as if some of her bones were no longer rigid. Moving over to Min, she spoke just as quietly again. "The instant Dalian is done with the stableman, tell him you are going to join me inside. Then hurry ahead, and stay away from him and Amena until I come back." From the noise roaring out of the inn, the crowd inside was big enough to hide an army. Surely big enough to hide the absence of one woman. Min got that mulish look about her eyes and opened her mouth, no doubt to demand why. Siuan forestalled her. "Just do it, Serena, or I'll let you add cleaning his boots to handing him his plate." The stubborn look remained, but Min gave a sullen nod. Pushing Bella's reins into the other woman's hands, Siuan hurried out of the stable yard and started down the street, in what she hoped was the right direction. She did not want to have to search the entire city, not in this heat and dust. Heavy wagons behind teams of 6 or 8 or even 10 filled the streets, drivers cracking long whips and cursing equally at the horses and at the people who darted between the wagons. Roughly dressed men mingling through the crowds in long wagon drivers' coats sometimes directed laughing invitations at women who passed them. The women who wore colorful aprons, sometimes striped, their heads wrapped in bright scarves, walked on with eyes...
Sorry about that, everybody. Just doing
Women without aprons
had to do a little part of my game I played over here on my phone.
And skirts sometimes ending a foot or more clear of the ground, often shouted back even ruder replies. Siuan gave a start when she realized that some of the men's suggestions were aimed at her. They did not make her angry. She really could not apply them to herself in her own mind, only startled. She was still not used to the changes in her, that men might find her attractive. Her reflection in the filthy window of a tailor's shop caught her eye, not much more than a murky image of a fair-skinned girl under a straw hat. She was young, not just young appearing, as far as she could tell, but young, not much older than men, a girl in truth, from the vantage of the years she had actually lived. An advantage to having been still, she told herself. She had met women who would pay any price to lose 15 years. Some might even consider it a fair bargain. She often found herself listening to
Stir that bowl.
perhaps trying to convince herself they were real. Freed from the 3 O's, she could lie at need, for one thing, and her own father would not have recognized her. She did not really look as she had as a young woman. The changes maturity had made were still there, but softened into youth. Coldly objective, she thought she might be somewhat prettier than she had been as a girl. Pretty was the best that had ever been said of her. Handsome had been the more usual compliment. She could not connect that face to her, to Suami Sanchi. Only inside was she still the same, her mind yet held all its knowledge. There, in her head, she was still herself. Some of the inns and taverns in Lugard had names like the Farrier's Hammer, or the Dancing Bear, or the Silver Pig, often with garish signs painted to match. Others had names that
Oh
should
shit,
not
still
have been
5.
the mildest of that sort being the kiss, the painting of a coppery-skinned woman with her lips. She wondered what Liana would make of that, but the way the woman was now, it might only give her notions. At last, on a side street just as wide as the main, just beyond a gateless opening in one of the collapsing inner walls, she found the inn she wanted. 3 stories of rough gray stone, topped with purple roof tiles. The sign over the door had an improbably voluptuous woman wearing only her hair, arranged to hide as little as possible, astride a barebacked horse, and a name that she skipped over as soon as she recognized it. Inside, the common room was blue with pipe smoke, packed with raucous men drinking and laughing, trying to pinch serving maids, who dodged as best they could with long-suffering smiles. Barely audible over the babble, a zither and a flute accompanied a young woman singing and dancing on a table at one end of the long room. Occasionally, the singer swirled her skirts high enough to show nearly the whole length of her bare legs. What Swan could catch of her song made her want to go wash out the girl's mouth. Why would a woman go walking with no clothes on? Why would a woman sing about it to a lot of drunken louts? It was not a sort of place she had ever been into before. She intended to make this visit as brief as possible. There was no mistaking the inn's owner, a tall, heavy-set woman in kilts and red silk dress that practically glowed.
They definitely like to climb, especially when they're real small like that. They could
surely never with such dark eyes, framed a thrusting chin and a
whatchamacallit,
in between shouting orders
become a escape artist.
She stopped at this table or that to speak a few words or slap a back and laugh with her patrons. Swan held herself stiffly and tried to ignore the considering looks men gave her.
So whether they're cats or little puppies, and build a kennel for them, they definitely find a way to escape.
Mistress Thorne, I want a job singing. I can sing. You can you now? The big woman laughed. Well, I have a singer, but I can always use another to give her a rest. Let me be seeing your legs. I can sing the song of the 3 fishes, Swan said loudly. This had to be the right one. Surely 2 women in one city could not have hair like that. Not and answer to the right name at the right inn. Mistress Thorne laughed harder still and slapped one of the men at the nearest table on the shoulder, jolting him half off his bench. Not much call for that one here, eh, pal? Gap-toothed Pell, a wagon driver's whip curled around his shoulder, cackled with her. And I can sing Blue Sky Dawn. The woman shook, scrubbing at her eyes as though she had laughed herself to tears. Can you now? I'm sure the lads will love that. Now let me see your legs. Your legs, girl, or get out. Swan hesitated, but Mistress Thorne only stared at her, and an increasing number of the men did too. This had to be the right woman. Slowly she pulled her skirt up to her knees. The tall woman gestured impatiently. Closing her eyes, Swan gathered more and more of her skirt in her hands. She felt her face growing redder by the inch. A modest one, Mistress Thorne chortled. Well, if those songs are the extent of your knowledge, you'd better have legs to make a man fall on his face. Can't tell till we get those woolen stockings off her, eh, pal? Well, come on with me. Maybe you have a voice anyway, but I can't hear it in here. Come on, girl.
Oh shit, get her fixed right after. That's the way to go. Because you definitely don't want a house full of cats.
Backbone like an iron rod, Swan let her skirts fall and followed, trying to ignore the
Because I think cats have bigger litter than dogs do most of the time.
Her face was stony, but inside worry roared with anger. Before being raised to the Amalan seat, she had run the Blue Ajah's network of eyes and ears. Some had also been her own personal listeners, both then and later. She might no longer be Amalan, or even Aes Sedai, but she still knew all of those agents. Jorunda Tharn had already been serving the Blue when she took over the network, a woman whose information was always timely. Eyes and ears were not to be found everywhere, and their reliability varied. There had been only one that she trusted enough to approach between Tar Valon and here, at Four Kings, in Andor, and she had vanished. But a vast amount of news and rumor passed through Lugard with the merchants' wagon trains. There might be eyes and ears for other Ajahs here. It would be well to remember that. Caution gets the boat home, she reminded herself. This woman fit the description of Jorunda Tharn perfectly, and surely no other inn could have a name so vile. But why had she responded as she did when Swan identified herself as another agent of the Queen?
Yeah, that definitely keep her from wandering.
In their own fashion were growing as impatient as Loghain. Caution got the boat home, but sometimes boldness brought back a full hold. At the worst, she could knock the woman over the head with something and escape out the back. Eyeing the woman's width and height, and the firmness of her thick arms, she hoped that she could. A plain door in the corridor that led to the kitchens opened into a sparsely furnished room, a desk and one chair on a blue carpet, a large mirror on one wall, and, surprisingly, a short shelf with a few books. As soon as the door was shut behind them, diminishing if not cutting off the noise of the common room, the big woman rounded on Swan, fists planted on ample hips. Now then, what do you want with me? Don't bother giving me a name. I don't want to know whether it's yours or not. A little of the tension oozed out of Swan, not the anger, though. You had no right to treat me in that manner out there. What did you mean, forcing me to... I had every right, Mistress Tharn snapped, and every necessity. If you'd come at opening or closing as you're supposed to, I'd none the wiser. Do you think some of those men would be wondering if I escorted you back here like a long-lost friend? I can't afford to have anyone wondering about me. You're lucky I didn't make you take Susu's place on the table for a song or two. And you watch your manner with me. She raised a wide, hard hand threateningly. I've married daughters older than you, and when I visit them, they step right and talk proper. You've come Mr. Smith to me, and you'll be learning why. Nobody out there will even hear you yet, and if they did, they wouldn't interfere. With a sharp nod, as if that were settled, she put fists on hips again. Now, what do you want? Several times during the onslaught, Swan had tried to speak, but the woman rolled over her like a tidal wave. That was not something she was accustomed to. By the time Mistress Tharn was done, she quivered with anger. Both hands held her skirts in a white-knuckled grip. She held on to her temper every bit as hard. I am supposed to be just another
almost
agent,
cashed.
she reminded herself firmly.
Then be back
Not
to some
the
dabs.
Amalan anymore, just another agent. Besides, she suspected that the woman might carry out her threat. This was something else still new to her, having to be wary of someone under her eye just because they were larger and stronger. I was given a message to deliver to a gathering of those we serve. She hoped Mistress Thorne took the strain in her voice for being cowed. The woman might be more helpful if she thought Swan properly intimidated. They were not where I was told to find them. I can only hope you know someone to help me find them. Folding her arms under a massive bosom, Mistress Thorne studied her. Know how to hold your temper when it suits, eh? Good. What's happened in the tower? And don't try denying you come from there, my fine haughty wench. Your message has courier writ large all over it, and you never got that snooty matter in a village. Swan drew a deep breath before answering. Swan's Sanche has been stilled. Her voice did not even tremble. She was proud of that. Elida Arroyhan is the new Amerlin. She could not keep a hint of bite out of that, however. Mistress Thorne's face showed no reaction. Well, that explains some of the orders I've gotten. Some of them, maybe. Stilled her, did they? I thought she'd be Amerlin forever. I saw her once a few years ago in Canelan, at a distance. She looked like she could chew harness straps for breakfast. Those impossible scarlet curls swung as she shook her head. Well, stone's done. The Ajahs have only one thing, my orders and the old buzzard stilled. The blues are running. Around her teeth, she tried telling herself the woman was loyal to the Blue Ajah, not to her personally, but it did not help.
Oh, that was a nasty one. That was a cash
She's old
stick.
enough to be my mother, and if she was, I'd drown myself. With an effort, she made her voice meek. My message is important. I must be on my way as soon as possible. Can you help me? Important, is it? Well, I'm doubting it. Trouble is, I can give you something, but it's up to you to cipher it out. Do you want it? The woman refused to make this any easier. Yes, please. Sally Dara. I don't know who she is or was, but I was told to give her name to any blue who came around looking lost, so to speak. You may not be one of the sisters, but you carry your nose high enough for one, so there it is. Sally Dara. Make of it what you will. Swan suppressed a thrill of excitement and made her face dejected. I've never heard of her either. I'll just have to go on looking. If you find them, you tell Aeldine Sedai I'm still loyal, whatever's happened. I've worked for the Blues so long, I wouldn't know what to do with myself else.
Yeah. It was a big toke, but it also
she had not known that
the
was
cash end of a bow.
The Blues' eyes and ears. The Amerlin, whatever Ajah she came from, was of all but part of none. I suppose you need some reason for not hiring me. I really cannot sing. That should do. As if it mattered to that lot out there. The big woman quirked an eyebrow and grinned in a way Swan did not like. I'll think of something, wench. And I'll give you a bit of advice. If you don't climb down a rung or two, some Aes Sedai will take you down the whole ladder. I'm surprised it hasn't been done already. Now go on, get out of here. Hateful woman, Swan growled in her head. If there was a way to manage it, I'd have her doing penance till her eyes popped. The woman thought she deserved more respect, did she? Thank you for your help, she said, making a curtsy that would have graced any court. You have been too kind. She was 3 steps into the common room when Mistress Thorne appeared behind her, raising her voice in a laughing shout that cut through the noise. A shy maiden, that one. Legs white and slender enough to set you all drooling, and she bawled like a baby when I told her she'd have to show them to you. Just sat right down on the floor and cried. Hips round enough for any taste. And she... Swan stumbled as the tide of laughter rose, never quite drowning out the woman's recitation. She managed another 3 steps, face red as a beet, then fled at a run. In the street, she paused to get her breath back and let her heart stop pounding. That horrible old harridan.
It'll hold my
It did
slicks,
not matter what she should
my
think.
nectar
That
collector.
disgusting woman had told her what she needed. Not Sally Dare, not a woman at all. Only
Oh,
a blue would know or even suspect. Salidar,
nice little,
birthplace of Diana Araman,
pretty hard
who lived
case,
in his
smell
Tom
proof.
Amelin after Bonwyn and had rescued the tower from the ruin Bonwyn had poised it for. Salidar, one of the last places anyone would look for Aes Sedai.
It actually came with a nectar collector. It was a pretty nice one.
Two men in snowy
But
cloaks and brightly burnished mail were riding
that
down
one
the
broke
street toward them,
because
reluctantly moving their horses
it was
aside
on my
and
table and I was
children of the light.
reaching over to grab something.
Tipping her head
And
down,
it slipped from my hand and it came down right on here and busted that whole part off. But the one that was in that case, because it came with a torch, actually came with this torch, a bigger, the nectar collector was a lot fatter and a little bit bigger, but it came with a titanium tip in it. But it came with that case with two slicks. But yeah, that one, that nectar collector broke. But the case is cool, so.
Mistress Tharn's remarks would not have made her stride waver in the least, when that overgrown, dyed fishwife would not have dared say a word of it. If that termagant doesn't like my manner, what she would do was continue about the business she was on before Mistress Tharn pummeled her, so she could not sit a saddle. Sometimes it was hard remembering the days were gone when she could call kings or queens and have them come. Striding down the street, she glared so hard that some of the wagon drivers bit back the comments they had been going to make to a pretty young woman alone. Some of them did. Min sat on a bench against the wall of the crowded common room in the Nine-Horse Hitch, watching a table surrounded by standing men, some with coiled drivers' whips, others wearing the swords that marked them merchants' guards. 6 more sat shoulder to shoulder around the table. She could just make out Loghain and Lyanna sitting on the far side. He wore a disgruntled frown. The other men hung on Lyanna's every smiling word. The air was thick with pipe smoke and full of chatter that nearly drowned the music of flute and tambourine.
Yeah, that day sucked, and I barely had that. Like I said, the case came with the nectar collector. There was a little set that it was like a travel dab kit or take on the go type dab kit. Yeah, I bought it and I only had it for, I think that was like the second or third day that I had it, and it broke on me.
And she had attracted more men like flies to honey.
Very disappointing day that day.
Light in her eyes. There had very nearly been a riot. Loghain and the merchants' guards with hands on swords, knives being drawn, the stout proprietor and 2 heavily muffled fellows rushing in with cudgels. With a smile here, a few words there, a pat on the cheek. Even the innkeeper had lingered a while, grinning like a fool, until his customer.
I had to take another one of that one here soon.
And Lyanna thought she needed practice. It hardly seemed fair. If I could do that to one particular man, I'd be more than satisfied. Maybe she'd teach me. Light? What am I thinking? She'd always been herself, and everyone else could accept her as she was or not. Now she was thinking about changing what she was for a man. It was bad enough that she had to hide herself in a dress instead of the coat and breeches she'd always worn. He'd look at you in a dress with neckline cut low. You've more to show than Lyanna does. Stop that. We have to go south, Siuan said to her shoulder, and Min gave a start. She'd not seen the other woman come in. Now, from the shine in Siuan's blue eyes, she had learned something. Whether she would share it was another matter. The woman seemed to think she was still honest most of the time. We cannot reach anywhere else with an inn before nightfall, Min said. We might as well take rooms here for the night. It was pleasant to sleep in a bed again instead of under hedges and in haystacks. even if she did usually have to share it with Lyanna and Swan. Loghain was willing to rent them all rooms, but Swan was tight with their coin, even when Loghain was doling it out. Swan looked around, but whoever in the common room was not staring at Lyanna was listening to the singer. That isn't possible. I think some white cloaks may be asking questions about me. Min whistled softly. Dalin won't like that. Then do not tell him. Swan shook her head at the gathering about Lyanna. Just tell Amaina that we have to go. He'll follow. Let us just hope the rest don't as well. Min grinned wryly. Swan might claim that she did not care that Loghain, Dalin, had taken charge, mostly by just ignoring her whenever she tried to make him do anything, but she was still determined to bring him to heel again. What is a 9-horse hitch, anyway? She asked, getting to her feet. She had gone out front, hoping for a hint, but the sign over the door bore only the name. I have seen 8 and 10, but never 9. In this town, Swan said primly, it is better not to ask. Sudden spots of color in her cheeks made Min think that she knew very well. Go fetch them. We've a long way to go and no time to waste. And don't let anyone overhear you. Min snorted softly. With that small smile on Lyanna's face, none of those men would even see her. She wished she knew how Swan had brought herself to the right cloak's attention. That was the last thing they needed, and it was not like Swan to make mistakes. She wished she knew how to make Rand look at her like those men were looking at Lyanna. If they were going to be riding all night, and she suspected they were, maybe Lyanna would be willing to give her a few tips.
Chapter 12. An Old Cop. A gust of wind swirling dust down the Lugard Street knocked Gareth Bryn's velvet hat, sweeping it from his head directly under one of the lumbering wagons. An iron-rimmed wheel ground the hat into the hard clay of the street, leaving a flattened ruin behind. For a moment he stared at it, then walked on. It was showing tracks, he thought himself. His silk coat reaching Randy too. No longer did much good when he even took the trouble. It looked more brown than gray now. He should find something plainer. He was not on his way to a ball. Dodging between wagons rumbling down the rutted street, he ignored the driver's curses that followed him. Any decent squadman could get better in his sleep, and ducked into a red-roofed inn called the Wagon Seat. The painting on the sign gave the name explicitly. The common room was like every common room. Wagon drivers and merchants' guards packed in with stablemen, farriers, laborers, every sort of man. All talking or laughing as loud as they could, while drinking as much as they could. One hand for the cup and one to fondle the serving girls. For that matter, it was not all that much different from common rooms in taverns in many other towns, though most were considerably milder. A buxom young woman, in a blouse that seemed about to fall off, capered and sang atop a table at one side of the room.
Right.
Supposed music of two flutes.
They definitely are always ducking into inns to go
He had no
stash.
ear for music, but he paused a moment to appreciate her song. She would have gone over well in any soldier's camp he had ever seen. But then, she would have been as popular if she could not sing a note. Wearing that blouse, she would have found a husband in short order. Johnny and Barham were already there. Johnny's size enough to grant them a table by themselves, despite his thin hair and the bandage he still wore around his temples. They were listening to the girl sing, or at least staring at her. He touched each man on the shoulder and nodded toward the side door that led to the stable yard, where a sullen groom with a squint delivered their horses for 3 silver pennies. A year or so earlier, Bryn could have bought a fair horse for no more. The troubles to the west and in Carrion were playing havoc with trade and prices. No one spoke until they passed the city gates and were on a seldom-traveled road, winding north toward the River Storn, little more than a wide dirt track. Then Barham said, "They were here yesterday, my lord." Bryn had learned that much himself. 3 pretty young women together, obvious outlanders, could not pass through a city like Lugard without being remarked. By men, anyway. Them and a fellow with shoulders, Barham went on. Sounds maybe like that Dallin was with them when they burned down Nem's barn. Anyway, whoever he is, they was at the 9 Horse Hitch for a bit, but all they did was drink some and leave. That Domani girl the lads was telling me about, she never kicked up a fuss flashing her smile and swaying about, but then she calmed everything down again the same way. Burn me, but I'd like to meet me a Domani woman.
Alright, everyone, probably gonna call into this live for right now and try to get some sleep. But I want to thank everyone for stopping by and everyone who keeps stopping by and chilling with me. Definitely appreciate all y'all's support. But I'll probably be on doing a gaming live tomorrow. But yeah, definitely appreciate all y'all. And until next time, all y'all have a good night and stay safe out there.